Good afternoon, Tampa Bay. We're back again on a Tuesday afternoon. It's not raining in Tampa Bay. That's unusual for the last couple of weeks. It's a beautiful day outside, even better here inside the headquarters, world headquarters of the DuPont Registry Publishing Empire. My name is Tom DuPont. I'm publisher of the DuPont Registry Luxury Living in Tampa Bay. We are delighted to have as our guest today Mr. Peter Sontag. He's a well-known travel expert and a car enthusiast on top of that. So we've known of each other for some time, and it's my pleasure, Peter, to welcome you to DRTB Live.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great of you to come by. So just a couple of interesting points here for people to know. Peter's been planning and conducting Porsche tours for Porsche Club members all over Europe. Any in the U.S.?
Also in the U.S., I just returned from a trip to Colorado. We've also done unique things. We did a Porsche trip to China.
China?
Where we drove Porsches in the Himalayas.
Oh, my goodness. And obviously you have some support teams
Yes.
to go with you just in
Yes.
case. So Fast Lane Travel is the name of the business, and 8,000 Fast Lane Travel guests since 1975.
Correct.
And I got to read this note to make sure I get this right. A lot of people have bought Porsches on these tours and then have them shipped home. And Fastlane Travel has sold and delivered, actually been in the process of getting people to buy cars from Porsche AG, of close to 1,000 Porsches worth approximately $100 million.
Correct.
And I'm sure the Porsche people like you.
Yes, Wolfgang Porsche is always very grateful when he sees me, and we've been good friends for many years. And what happens is some people who are not familiar with Porsche, they come on the trips, and they like the car so much. In fact, one lady was on the trip with her son. She landed in Charlotte after the trip, went straight from the airport to the Porsche dealer and bought a Panamera.
That's a success story that we like to hear about. You know, the DuPont Registry magazines have always been focused on that one-on-one return. The old saying we use all the time is we don't have millions of readers, but we have readers with millions.
Good.
And what we try to do is connect somebody who's an enthusiast with somebody who has something to sell that they want. And it's whether it's a Porsche or a Lamborghini or Ferrari or Rolls-Royce or Corvette or whatever it is, it's usually something on the exotic end. And you get that enthusiasm going, and you put the people together, and then it kind of gets oil and gas in your blood system.
Indeed.
And it won't go away. So you started out in the sales business and built a big U.S. travel company, and then
Yes, in my early career, I was the founder of a company called U.S. Travel, and I built it from zero to 540 offices from Alaska to Key West. My sales were $2.5 billion.
Wow.
I had 4,000 employees, profitable every quarter, except one quarter in '91 during Desert Storm. But my investors then sold the company in '94, and I tried golf for 20 minutes. And I know you're a golf lover, but I'm not good at golf, so I decided to keep doing Porsche trips.
Well, it must be that your avocation as well as your vocation.
Indeed.
So. Let's see, we had a little tour around the showroom here at the DuPont Registry headquarters, and I have a Porsche, and I've owned it for 50 years, but you must have some Porsches in your garage.
I do. I have a little electric one for my grandson. And I have, of course, a beautiful Panamera, which is modeled after Ferry Porsche's favorite colors, which were Jagdgrün mit hellbraunem Leder, hunting green with tan leather. I have a red 911 coupe. My wife drives a Macan S, and I also have a little Porsche race car, like the little go-kart, one of the
Sure.
Porsche race cars.
Well, imagine that. So here we live in Pinellas County, and you live right here in Pinellas County, right?
I do.
And
I live in Clearwater, right across from Safety Harbor.
So one of the real benefits of being right here in this area is that if you're doing a lot of travel, you come and go through Tampa International.
Yes.
Best airport in the world? Pretty close?
It is an awesome airport. When I have people from Europe that come visit, they're always impressed with Tampa International.
Well, it was years ago when it wasn't much of a place to land.
But now it is.
Now it's the spot to go in and out of the west coast of Florida.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about fast lane travel and the Porsche trips. All over Europe, mostly?
Yes. As I mentioned, all over Europe. We typically fly into Stuttgart, and one of the best flights there is you fly a Delta 116 from Atlanta nonstop into Stuttgart, and we pick up our cars in Stuttgart, and then we do excursions from there. So typically our trips, we have a short trip called the PCA, or Porsche Club Treffen. That one, you get a Porsche for 3 days. We do Autobahn, a couple mountain driving, or we have longer trips like down to Tuscany, where we rent an entire estate and we do excursions from there. And we like to do things that you could never do on your own. For example, in Tuscany, one of the major cities is Montepulciano. On top of Montepulciano, you have Piazza Grande, the cathedral city hall. No cars allowed in there. Guess who parks 20 Porsches with a police escort on Piazza Grande?
Sounds interesting, especially with a police escort.
Yes, no question.
That sounds wonderful. So all over Europe. So any favorite spots to go? Any places you said if you're going to go there?
One of the countries I think that's up and coming comparatively to brand name London and Paris, Austria is phenomenal.
Wow.
I love to do the tours from Stuttgart to Salzburg, Austria, then cross the Großglockner Mountain, which is the highest alpine mountain road, and go over to Gmünd. Gmünd is where the original post-war 1948 Porsche factory was located. It's privately owned now, and in fact I have access to it, and we do tours. You can sit at the desk where Professor Ferdinand Porsche designed cars. With the first order blank of all the first 356s is hanging on the wall, typewritten, who bought the cars. It's awesome.
Okay, so Porsche's had a number of models from the original 356 all the way up through the 911s and the 996s and now into the more contemporary Panameras. Any favorites? Any ones that you think were the best Porsche? I mean, they're all the best Porsche, we know that.
Like you, my favorite is my 1963 356B. It's an awesome car. I had it for many years. And my current favorite is the Panamera. The Panamera, to me, I have a GTS. It is an awesomely powerful car. And quite frankly, 35 pounds ago, my 911 was more comfortable.
So the 911, of course, is a driving experience.
Yes, it is.
You never get in a 911 to go someplace. You get in the 911 to experience the road.
Exactly. In fact, Peter Schutz, back in '81 when he was made president of Porsche, I had a meeting with him 3 weeks after he joined the company, and he told me about his plans for the 911. Because at that time, Porsche was thinking about 928s, 944s, 924s, and Peter Schutz saved the 911, and thankfully he did.
Thankfully he did, yeah. Peter was quite a character. I met him one day in the Tampa International Airport. Just bumped into each other, said hi, and we started talking and introduced ourselves. And I said, well, I know who you are. And he was just on some trip somewhere.
Yep.
So there you are. How many cars normally? How many Porsches in a group when you have these tours?
Typically, we divide the groups into 5 to 6 Porsches, and I employ a number of retired Porsche executives, and they're drive guides. So the first car is a Porsche with 5 or 6 Porsches behind that drive guide, connected with walkie-talkies. What we do is we pre-program all the Porsches with the navigation points. And in addition, you get a navigation booklet, so you can't get lost. The guide will also not only tell you what we can do now in terms of speed or getting off the exit, but it will also tell you when the Romans were here, this is what happened. So it's a fascinating tour.
That sounds like a great tour. So you have an expert up in front, and they're probably experienced where there might be a speed trap.
Absolutely. In fact, we warn the customers, of course, if there are any speed cameras on country roads and so on. So we're very mindful. What we're insisting on is that before we hand you keys to a car, we have a driver's briefing which we in fact have recorded, so it plays for the customers, and we have one of the guides there who can answer questions. But it's very important to us, safety. And we don't want to turn people loose who think the Autobahn is a racetrack. It's not a racetrack. There are very specific rules you have to follow. You can have a lot of fun, but you got to know the rules.
And you spend most of your time on the back roads, I would think, though, going up
We
and down
spend most of the time on mountain roads.
Oh.
Frankly, everybody who has never been there says, "Oh, I want to drive the Autobahn." And when they come back, they say, the Hantenjoch or the Silvretta Hochharpenstraße, they were the best.
We were looking at, I have a 1929 Model G DuPont 4-place Speedster, and I had that car in California, was driving down Highway 1 from Pebble Beach down to Big Sur and back, and somebody said, "Oh, that must have been fantastic. You must have, the views are just unbelievable." I said, "The only thing I saw was the road and the taillights in front of me, because I'm driving this big beast of a car that's almost 100 years old, and I was just so worried that it would do something." Little narrow, big tires, and I thought
disc brakes weren't invented yet.
Yeah, no, and you need plenty of room to slow that big guy
That's
down.
for sure.
But with a Porsche, you get a chance to look around if
Yes,
you're
you
in a
do.
modern car. That's for sure.
Yes, you do.
So, how many trips have you done?
I'm flying over on September 4th, and that'll be my 194th Porsche trip.
Coming up on 200. That's going to be
Yep.
a big one.
Yep.
Well, I would think the Porsche factory would have a big birthday
I
cake
think
for
there'll
you.
be a little celebration.
And you get a lot of repeats?
Indeed. We have over 40% of our customers are repeats. It's not unusual that we have people who've been 5, 6, 8 Porsche trips. The record holders are a lovely couple from Bristol, Virginia, Eddie and Susie, and they've been on 23 Porsche trips. On the last trip, Eddie stands up and says, wonderful scenery, fast cars, the cuisine, the luxury hotels, all the new friends we made. But I'm going to keep coming back until Fastlane gets it right.
You need those kind of people in your life because they're so supportive, and everybody sees
23 Porsche trips.
23
with
Porsche
us.
trips.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, what advice do you give the guy at the beginning? You said you had a little video for them.
Yes.
And when somebody's saying, "Geez, that sounds interesting to me," do you give them a little quiz so that they're not quite such a novice?
We do ask questions afterwards. We have a little fun game where we ask them, is it possible to pass on the right in Germany, etc., and so on. And people pay close attention because they know their safety depends on it.
Absolutely. So there are other, believe it or not, there are other exotic cars and performance cars and sports cars besides Porsche. You ever get any of these outliers in on the tour?
Yes, very much so. We've had Ferrari, Lambos, Bentley on the tour. Also, sometimes people say, I like Porsche, but I want to drive something else. And, I want a Aventador or something. I said, I can get you anything you want, okay? Don't ask me the second question.
Which is how much? Yeah, it's all.
I can get you anything you want.
When it comes to automobiles, dollars are usually the only restriction when you have somebody who has connections there. So I drove a Lamborghini Gallardo around the track at Homestead.
Okay.
And we did similar to what you did. We had a lead car, and then there were 4 of us.
Yeah.
And then when you came back around and circled into the pits, the first journalist at that time would drop back and the others would move forward. And they weren't going fast enough for me.
Okay.
And we weren't. It was a casual trip for people who didn't understand cars, and I was fortunately in a 6-speed, top down, radio blaring, air conditioning on, zipping around at 120, 130 miles an hour. And I don't know, most people don't know what this experience is, but we got up near the 3/4 of the way up the oval, around the corner. It's a long ways down if you look out the left-hand window.
Yes, it is.
That's a little frightening.
Yeah.
If you're not used to it. And I got used to it on the 3rd lap. And we peaked at about 120 miles an hour. And when I got behind the factory driver, who was the lead guy, I said, well, let's catch him. that wasn't going to happen. He just kept looking in the rearview mirror and moving a little further
Of
away.
course.
And I kept going a little further until maybe I should slow down a little bit here because I'm not going to make this next corner.
Good decision.
But a good place to be on a racetrack. Do you get any racetrack experience when you go to Europe on these tours?
Absolutely. To build on that point, we have a special program at the Nürburgring, about 120 miles northwest of Frankfurt. We also do a program on the Porsche test track in Leipzig, where they build Panameras and Cayennes and Macans. And we also like to do the Red Bull Ring in Spielberg, Austria. So we have specific programs, and then at the Nürburgring, for example, the first thing I'd like you to do is to be driven around by a professional race driver, and these guys will make your gums bleed. Okay,
absolutely, yeah.
And likewise at the Porsche track in Leipzig, the same system where the lead driver and then you rotate to go behind the driver, and people love it. I mean, if you want a real track experience, come with me on the Nürburgring.
That would be quite an experience. You'd have to be ready to go. And a lot of G-force in that.
Enormous G-force, and what makes the Nürburgring so challenging is I think it's one of the most challenging tracks in the world is the Nordschleife, or the Northern Loop, and the road surface changes. So you have to be aware of the various, if you will, asphalt versus concrete versus this, versus some bricks, and also the banking, like you pointed out earlier.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I understand the motto for fast lane travel is it's our business to do pleasure.
Yes.
Where'd you come up with that?
One of the customers coming back from a trip saying, this was an incredible pleasure. And he said, this was so right. It was an incredible pleasure. And I thought, everybody uses the motto, it's our pleasure to do business. Our business is to do pleasure. Let's face it.
That's easy. That's like the millions of eyeballs and eyeballs with
course.
Millions. Absolutely, yeah. It's wonderful. So when you go on these trips, your average driving number of hours in a day is in the
It
morning,
varies.
break for lunch?
We have one trip, for example, which we call the 12 Alpine Passes. As the name implies, it's a more hard driving trip where we do a little more driving every day, and we do the most awesome European passes. Other trips are more relaxed, like the Tuscany trip. We get down to Tuscany, we do excursions, maybe a couple hours in the morning or a couple hours in the afternoon, to see the best scenery and the most enjoyable roads.
So Peter Sontag must do something else in his spare time. Probably not a whole lot. It's not Porsche related. But you live here in Clearwater, and I've explained to a lot of people who I meet around the country that Clearwater and the Tampa Bay area in general is probably the most philanthropic place in the country. There's lots of centers of people where there's a lot of wealth and they take care of a lot of needs of others. But this area just has a tradition, whether it's the hospital or the Boys and Girls Club, or another Habitat for Humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So any activities like that in Clearwater here?
Yes. We support a number of eleemosynary activities. One of my favorite is Close to Kids. There's a shop here in St. Petersburg where mostly inner city kids can get coupons and can purchase clothing, shoes, socks, underwear, any kind of clothing. So that's one of our activities. I've also established 4 endowed scholarships for students that can't afford to go to college. And we participate in various activities at the Hopkins Children's Hospital and the Moffitt. Yeah.
It's important to help those in need.
Absolutely,
When
yeah. You have to give back. You see, I'm very fortunate. I came here with nothing to the U.S. as an immigrant, and I'm very strong believer in giving back.
And so where did you grow up and start your life in the U.S.? How old were you when you got here?
I was 17 when I came here, and I was taken in by a family in Steubenville, Ohio. And it's the heartland, the most generous people and kind people in the world, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally, if you will, and very supportive. And I worked 4.5 years as an ironworker in a steel mill and worked my way through college.
Where'd you go to school?
Undergraduate school, a school called West Liberty University. I was actually admitted to Cornell, but I was too stupid not to go. In a sense, they sent me a bill for my first semester's tuition, $3,800. That in 1965, that was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And coming from Europe, I'm not used to buying stuff on credit at the time. So I said, if I can't afford it, I can't do it. So I got a job, worked my way through school, and then went to Columbia University for a graduate degree.
And I understand you've participated at the MUMA school over at USF too.
Yes, I have.
And in order to give some knowledge you've learned over
They've
your
called me
career.
occasionally for a lecture on mergers and acquisitions, new product development, etc.
It's fascinating to me to listen to the questions that come up today from students.
Yes.
And it's always fun to talk to them and then give them a few little vignettes on why the theory they just read about in a book just doesn't work.
Won't work. Or why they shouldn't spend money on this instead of that.
Well, we've been very blessed and very, we tell people here that we've been lucky. And I always define luck as preparation and opportunity having a wreck. Because if you're prepared and you recognize an opportunity coming along,
sure,
you can take advantage of it.
No question.
And if you're opportunistic and you see opportunities coming by, you better be prepared, and then you can get off to the races. So much. So, any advice to these youngsters looking up to buying some kind of a performance sports car or something in the United States? You need to be careful here. The roads are crowded.
If a youngster wants to buy a sports car, my recommendation is I would buy a good used car. Obviously, I'm very biased towards the Porsche brand, and it depends on your budget. But Porsche has some awesome used cars that you can use as an entry-level sports car. Boxster 911, or even some of the 944s, 924s that are still around.
Good advice, and starting out by saving a little bit of money and not necessarily buying a brand new car, because the used ones in good shape are usually a good strong value, and you might want to pay attention and go to a driving school. Because they can teach you some habits, and above all, I always tell people, I said, not that you'd worry about it when you're buying the car, but make sure it has good brakes.
Right. I mean, for example, the school in Birmingham is wonderful, and I've been there actually as a refresher, and it is a fantastic school that'll make you comfortable in driving safely fast.
Those things you have to watch out for and observe the speed limit. One last question. What is the speed limit on the Autobahn?
Well, the Autobahn, about 40% has no speed limit, and the rest does have speed limit around cities and so on. But people always say, oh my God, no speed limit. The fatality rate on U.S. interstate highways is 2.5 times that of Germany. And there are three compelling reasons for that. One, it costs $3,000 to get a driver's license. You have to go to school for 6 months. Two, the roadbed is a lot safer. It's 48 inches deep with rebars. There are no potholes or anything. And three, the rules are enforced rigorously. You pass on the left. When you're done passing, move over. If you stay in the left lane, you get a ticket for obstruction. If you pass on the right, okay, and you do this, you lose your license for 1 year. Okay, so you don't have these. I mean, yesterday I was driving back from St. Augustine on 75, and people, it's like skiing. They're slaloming back and forth because there's somebody in the left lane who simply won't move.
Not only that, the ones that are slaloming back and forth are in some car that shouldn't be slaloming.
Yeah,
at that speed.
it's to me that's more dangerous than driving 20 miles faster than the speed limit.
And
it's crazy.
Of course, the thing that has made driving on the highway more dangerous than any other thing that's happened is this little gadget we have here.
Of course, yeah.
I had a little tap in the back of my Mercedes wagon from just slowing down, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I'm going, I better move up a little bit, and pretty soon I slowed down. It was almost at a stop, and I get a little bump at the back, and I look in the rearview mirror, and of course the young lady is
doing this.
So I said, time for me. I'm old enough. I'll deliver a lecture. So no damage to the car, just a little bump. So I pull in the left-hand turn lane and pull up for her. I figure she'll pull in behind me. Meow, right by me. Off to the races.
Oh, yeah.
I said, well,
welcome.
I hope she learned her lesson. Not to your cell phone. If you're in your car and you're driving, your cell phone belongs face down on the console or in the passenger seat.
We'd love to have you come on a trip. Next year, I'm doing another trip to China. My wife is Chinese, and she plans out this wonderful trip where we do things that you could never do on your own.
Well, I'm supposed to be semi-retired, so maybe I'll have time.
Well, I'm semi-retired, so why don't we get our semi-retirement together?
And we can both be either fully retired or fully working.
Come on.
Together. Sounds like a great idea. I may take you up on the invitation.
Please do.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure to talk with Peter Sontag, the founder of Fastlane Travel, an expert in the travel business and also a car enthusiast. Auto enthusiasts usually, traditionally, and almost all the time are friendly people because they love cars. And when they bump into somebody else who loves cars, you might as well sit down for a while because we're going to talk. So we're going to talk for a little while after this, but we know everybody else has got a little ways to go. Thanks for joining with us today. We're here at the DuPont Registry International Headquarters in St. Petersburg, Florida, just south of Ulmerton Road in the north end of the county. So we appreciate you listening in today. Peter, thanks so much for coming and visiting to us. We hope you found it interesting. And to all of our listeners, whenever you are catching up with us, be sure and share this on your Facebook and share with your friends so they get a chance to meet Peter and learn a little bit about Fastlane Travel. Thanks very much. Go out and make it a great day, Tampa Bay.
FastlaneTravel.com.